Hi, Mr. Bedi. Good evening. Welcome to ETimes. How have
Thank
you
you.
been?
I've been very well. I've been a very busy man.
I'm sure,
From what?
yeah. I've been seeing interviews of you at quite a lot of places and quite interesting ones, I must say.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
At a time, especially when we have stars who refrain from taking a stand on almost everything and probably justified in a way because there are trolls and they get trolled mercilessly. At such a time to come out with a tell-all memoir like this and be very candid as you always have been about life, didn't you at any point in time feel the same kind of pressure that our stars face when they are talking about their lives?
There's a sort of एक कश्मकश चलती रहती है between the public's desire to know about a celebrity's life
Right.
and a celebrity's desire to keep his life private.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, if you are a celebrity, if you worked so hard to become a celebrity, there's a
Right.
natural curiosity about your life,
Yeah.
and you can't deny that.
Right.
So these are not rights on either side. These are competing desires. And there's nothing, and then you have to draw a line in the sand somewhere because you can't tell everything about your life,
Right.
but you can't hide everything either. So trolls, which you face when you talk about your life or take a stand on any issue, as you mentioned, they're part of the territory. It comes with the territory. You have to accept the fact that if you're a person of any significance doing anything significant, there will be trolls, and you deal with them. But that shouldn't stop you from taking a stand, writing a book, talking about your life, supporting causes that you believe in. You can't stop being a vibrant, a concerned human because of fear of what people might say.
Right. But also the fact that, when you talk about your personal life, it's the only thing that at one point in time becomes talked about. Does that bother you at any point in time? Because, you have a prolific body of work, but instead of that, there are talks about your marriages, your failed relationships, when instead we could be focusing on other things. Does that ever bother you? And, the same thing happens in the West, but people over there don't bat an eyelid. Even the paparazzi don't really make much about seeing someone with someone else. So does that bother you about India and how we treat our celebrities and put them on a pedestal and expect them to be these superhumans who can't make mistakes?
Yeah, you have a very, very valid point here. And I don't blame the media for picking out the bits that others seem the juiciest bits, because ultimately people want eyeballs, they want readership, they want people to be involved. My book is divided into chapters, which are many stories. Almost each chapter is like a complete story unto itself.
Right.
And say one chapter is on Parveen Babi, and that's a very in-depth chapter. It talks about a lot of things in our relationships and all that we went through. And that is a story as I saw it. And I've stated it. There's one chapter on Pratima, who was a trailblazer in her time, who was more daring than most people could ever hope to be in her time, broke so many social conventions. And we were the sort of children of the 60s and 70s. So we did a lot of daring things. Of course, those things tend to get picked up by the Indian media because that's instant. Oh, this is a story about Parveen, this is a story about Kabir and Pratima, etc. But the fact of the matter is there are many other stories in my book. And I don't mind them looking for a headline because they want to create a relatable headline. I understand that. So I have to thank them for the attention they give me. If that's the help they need, great.
Right.
My job is to say, yes, there's a lot in there, but there's a lot more. And I've shared a lot of my life, including my philosophical journey, including the best and worst years of Hollywood, including the extraordinary successes I had in Europe, how I managed to interview the Beatles, beating all the press corps. All those stories, why I came to Bombay with 700 rupees in my pocket, what happened here, how did I manage to wend my way through this jungle of the film industry.
So coming to films a bit, in Khoon Bhari Bang, we just spoke to Sonu Walia a few weeks ago for our big interview section, and she told us how she was to wear this swimsuit, and at those times actresses were really very reserved about wearing certain things, and when she saw you in swimming trunks, it kind of eased her into the process, because at that time actors used to mostly go into the pool wearing a kanji and shorts. So firstly, how was that a conscious decision that you decided to make her comfortable? And
No,
right,
no, no,
yeah.
not at all. I just, because
Okay.
for me, if you come to a swimming pool, you wear swimming trunks and you dive
Yeah,
in.
yeah,
It's not a question of wearing ganji and chaddis. It's
right,
it's the way it was,
right,
and I had a body that I wasn't ashamed of, so I
yeah,
was quite happy to show it.
right,
And it was a scene that was supposed to be a sexy song, and sung in the middle of a pool between a
yeah,
good-looking man and a good-looking woman. And
yeah,
that was the basis of how we shot Main Teri Hu Janam.
right,
And that Main Teri Hu Janam became a huge hit at the
right,
time, and is often quoted to me at various occasions.
yeah,
And Khoon Bhari Mang became one of my biggest Bollywood hits. I was shooting in Honolulu with Tom Selleck for
right,
Magnum PI when
yeah,
Rakesh Roshan called me back to
right,
shoot the film. So it happened during the middle of my Hollywood years. And then I stayed back
yeah,
to shoot Yalgar and a few other films.
yeah,
So, the one thing that's interesting is when you're part of three separate film industries,
yeah,
right? How do
right,
you maintain your presence in three industries across the world in an age when there's no internet, there's no social media?
exactly, yeah. That's what I was
How do
coming to.
people
Yeah,
feel that you're still there, even if you're not there?
exactly.
This is sort of part of the story that I tell,
Oh, okay,
and this was a very important part of my writing it to show how you keep alive in different industries at the same time.
right, right,
And of course, today we're living through very different times. And I think the COVID situation is going to change everything in every film industry.
right.
The way we film, the subjects we film. I mean, future films, are we going to show everyone with masks on, or are we going to pretend masks didn't exist, that the
I know.
pandemic didn't exist? All these are
Right.
problems filmmakers are going to have to face.
Yeah, I know.
How do you sing a love song in a mask? Those kind of
I hope
topics
not.
people are going to have to deal with.
Right.
In the middle of this, before we conclude, I really want to say that let us not forget that we are in the middle of a serious pandemic that
Right.
is threatening the human race. We can only get
Right.
out of it if we are in it together.
Right.
And please remember those less fortunate than ourselves.
Right. So also, like I was coming to that. So at the time when you were very gentlemanly off screen, we have heard all stories of your how chivalrous you were, and like how in general very concerned of women's safety and everything. But at the same time, you were playing this antagonist roles in Bollywood films. Why was that? I mean, were those the offers that came to you, or did you choose them?
I played all kinds of roles. I played heroes, I played villains, I played supporting actors, I played fathers, I played uncles, bosses, gangsters, you name them. And
Right.
I've played this in film industries across the world. The one reason I got Khoon Bhari Mang is because I was so versatile. When Rakesh called me, I said, why are you calling me in Honolulu? What happened to all of Bollywood? Can't they act in it? He said, no,
Right.
this is a film where the hero turns into a villain.
Oh,
And so heroes don't want to do it. And if I
right.
put a villain in, there's no surprise. So you're the only one who can convincingly play a hero and a villain. Therefore, I want
Transition.
you.
Right.
And that versatility helped me
Right.
because
Yeah.
I played all kinds of roles and still do.
Right. Yeah. True.
You
Also,
can't
you were
play.
taking the. Sorry.
I said you can't play hero all your life. You have to
Of course, you
diversify
can't.
as an actor,
That
adapt
would
as
be
an
very
actor to
boring
that.
as well. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Right. Also, you were taking the European scene by a storm, and we all know with Sandokan how famous you were in Italy at one given point in time. And right now, when the millennials and the Gen Zs, they don't really know about your body of work. Does that bother you? Because now we have the internet, so why don't we have your body of work being talked about more? Does that bother you, or are you trying to do anything about it?
Well, that is one of the reasons I wrote my book, because I thought, and my book is dedicated to the younger generation. The
Right.
dedication my book reads, I dedicate this book to young professionals like my son Siddharth, all the young people that want to make the world a better place, because it's very important for young people today to know not just what happened to me and the success I had as an actor internationally, and being the first actor to go from Bollywood to Hollywood and make a career there and live there.
Right.
The first actor to be from Bollywood to become a major star in Europe. All that's important. What's also important with them is to know the times we lived in. What happened in the ferment, the social, politically, and sexual ferment of the 60s and 70s.
Right.
The time of the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Doors, the Simon and Garfunkel.
Right.
Demonstrations for peace on the streets, the hippies. What is it like to live in that age of social ferment when everything was changing? Right. What is it like to be in Bollywood in the 70s with all the three great acting greats of Raj Kapoor, Dilip Kumar, and Devanand rubbing shoulders with you at different events, and all the other heroes of the time around you? What is it like to be in that time? What is it like to be in Hollywood of the 80s and 90s? What is it like to meet Audrey Hepburn and have a life-changing conversation with her? Sean Connery, Michael Caine, Omar Sharif. All these are, and what they represent, you know. Omar was the first actor from Asia that became a star in Hollywood. So he was like a role model for me. So to be part of all that, the younger generation need to know that. They need to know that.
Right. I'm sure. And when you were in Italy, sorry. No, I was just getting at what was the one craziest fan moment. I'm sure you've had many, but what was the one craziest fan thing that happened? Something that a fan did?
At a fan meet in Spain, where the crowds were going mad, there was one girl that screamed out loud, "I want to have your baby."
Oh my God.
And that phrase became a mantra for the media in Spain for decades. That defined my stardom in Spain, you know. And so those are the fun moments of the past.
Coming to your Hollywood career for a bit, and talking about how actors who have made the transition, not a transition per se, but maybe they have acted in one or two films, often complain about being typecasted. Do you think that happened to you with Octopussy? Do you think you were somewhere typecasted in it, or in the other films that you have done since in Hollywood?
Ankita, my problem was different. My problem was the fact that in those days they were not writing roles for Indians. They were not writing roles for Indians. What do you do?
Right.
So I adapted by saying, okay, I'll play all foreign roles. And I played many foreign roles, like in The Bold and Beautiful, this world famous television series, most watched in the world, second most watched in the world. I played a Moroccan prince for a year. And that got me a worldwide fan following.
Yeah.
In fact, in the James Bond film that I did, I was cast correctly. I was cast as an Indian Sikh, which is what I am. Those are my roots.
Yeah.
And I played an ethically correct role for me. But in other films like Ashanti with Michael Caine, I was playing Tuareg tribesman, which is not like me at all. But I had to be the foreigner. But nothing gives me greater success than greater joy than watching the success of actors like Priyanka Chopra today. And yes, it is a little easier for them because roles are being written for people of different ethnicities, but it's never easy in this film business. It's one of the hardest businesses to be part of.
I'm sure.
And so it's important that that be acknowledged. Her achievement is no less just because it might be easier. She had her own struggles, her own problems to overcome. But I've always said that, anyone who survives for 50 years in the film business deserves an Oscar for survival.
I'm sure, sir. But also at the same time, you were working with Roger Moore and Tom Selleck, and like you pointed out, having chats with Audrey Hepburn. why didn't you make it a point to explore that that industry more? Why didn't we have you maybe bugging them for writing roles for you, because you were doing such great body of work? Why weren't roles being written for you? I just want to understand why this Hollywood career was cut short.
Well, the thing is, I did protest. I did write articles in Screen International. I did raise the issue of lack of diversity in Hollywood. But then, once swallowed is not a spring make. In time, enough people continued that process and that protest till diversity has today become an issue.
Right.
Casting and writing for different ethnicities is part of Hollywood's agenda today.
No,
So I can say I started the ball rolling by protesting, etc. And that protest has continued and resulted in that diversity. So that gives me great success, great joy that it's been successful in the long run. But that was one of my problems. But then the thing is, I wasn't entirely ever dependent on Hollywood. I did enough work in Europe, so that at the end of my career, Italy, I won't say end because it never ended, but towards this stage of my career, I've been given Italy's highest civilian honor. I've been knighted by the Italian Republic. Now that speaks a lot to my work in Europe. So let's not just be Hollywood-centric, just a Hollywood-focused. It's not the only film industry in the world. Europe is the same size as America. It's no less. So to be recognized and have that success in Europe doesn't diminish the level of my success internationally. But Hollywood gave me, because of the Bond film and Bold and Beautiful and many other American series I did, they gave me a worldwide base of fans. The Europeans gave me the European base of fans and South American. But the worldwide base of fans I have comes from Hollywood. And yes, I didn't become the megastar that I could have in Hollywood, but Hollywood gave me a lot. It also gave me some of my hardest times, which I've also written about in my book. So that's life. That's life. That's what makes an interesting story. Utar chadhav, setbacks, tragedies, triumph, heartbreak, glorious moments, and then life-changing decisions that you have to make on religions, on career, on because at every point we have to make decisions, and each decision has huge consequences, and the importance of making the right decision at the right time, because every single thing you do has immense consequences.
Boils down to that, right? But also, like you pointed out, the consequences. Did it ever happen that maybe you had to give up on a Bollywood film that seemed interesting because you were doing something abroad, and maybe this went on to become a hit? Were there any such projects that you rejected when you were in Hollywood?
There were Bollywood films that I turned down that I shouldn't have turned down, etc. But I'm not going to live on regrets, because I don't believe in regrets. I just believe that the best is yet to come, and I still do. The best is yet to come.
Of course, any day. Right. Also, like you pointed out, in Hollywood, now roles are being written for different ethnicities. But what about Bollywood? Are we writing roles for everyone? We have come a long way since the 80s and 90s films of that time, when it was a particular template and we used to follow that. But are we still writing roles for every age group, every ethnicity in Bollywood? What are your thoughts on that?
I think Bollywood has changed. It's making films of a very different type now. I think it's pushing the envelope. I think the coming of the OTT platforms, where suddenly people are able to see films from around the world, stories from around the world, a level of excellence, they're going to expect more from Bollywood. And Bollywood has always adapted as well. There are some things in commercial Bollywood cinema that remain the same, song and dance, etc., which Bollywood does better than anybody in the world, and is respected for it. It's like nobody asks why people sing in opera. Why are these fat ladies in fancy costumes singing in opera? You know,
Right.
it's like
It's a given.
that's an art form. And then song and dance is part of Bollywood's an art form. And we
Correct.
do it better than anybody. So I don't think Bollywood is anything to be ashamed of. Yet at the same time, we have a generation of directors that is making very realistic films, very hard-hitting films, very entertaining films. And we are quick learners. We're no slouches.
Yeah.
We may not have the budgets of Hollywood.
Right.
And we may not be able to get into the super expensive genres of, of certain levels of action and special effects.
Right.
But there's no limit to our imagination. And when
Right.
you look beyond Bollywood
Hmm.
into the Telugu film industry,
Right.
into Tamil film industry, Kannada, Bengal, you realize that together there's an extraordinary variety of films being made today.
True.
There's pushing the envelope in every way.
Yeah.
And we are still the world's biggest film producer.
Yeah.
So we're doing
That we
something
are.
right.
Must be. Yeah, I'm sure. But did it ever come to your, like, did you ever think of settling down abroad? Has that ever been?
Never.
You
Never.
lived abroad for a very long time. Okay.
I
never.
lived abroad for almost 30 years of my life, but I always knew
Right.
I'd come back because I always felt that this is where I want to be, among my people, among people whose problems I care about, whose values I share, whose problems I want to make my own, and whose destiny I wish to be part of the debate of. So I always knew I would come back to India, no matter how many years I spent abroad. And when the time was right, I came back to India. I still work abroad. They know me. I have agents abroad. When they want me, they call me, I go. And since coming back, I've done 2 films with Hrithik and 2 films with Shah Rukh, 1 film with Akshay Kumar. So work will continue here as well.
Right.
It could be possible I do my best role ever in any of the film industries, even now. I'm the eternal optimist. Everything can happen, and I believe the best is yet to come.
Also, sir, when we talk about, like you said, that being in the public eye is something that a celebrity has to understand as a part and accept as a part of their lives. But do you ever get tired of being scrutinized all the time? Do you ever want to, take a break from being in the public eye?
People who work very hard to be known and to become celebrities have no right to complain when they are recognized, and people who do invade their privacy when they're out in public. Yes, there are certain things you lose. You can't just go to the beach and watch sunset all alone and admire the people walking by you and think about life the way you might have. But the fact of the matter is, on the balance, it is so much better to be recognized by people, admired for what you've done. And if there's a natural curiosity for people to come and say, please take a selfie with me, take it as a compliment, not as an intrusion of your privacy. That's what I say.
I understand. Okay, sir, thank you so much for your time. And it was a great pleasure talking to you and having you here with ETimes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I bless you.